Welcome to the Trailblazer FM podcast. This is your host, Lee. And on today's show, we have Adam Zielinski. He's all the way from Poland. Actually, he's currently in Poland. We've not flown him in. He's live here on YouTube as well. If you're watching, folks, you can come and check out because we're going to be doing a demonstration of what we're talking about today later on. So check out the playlist timestamps below. Adam is a WordPress core developer at Automattic, and I am super excited to find out A, who Adam is, and B, what the WordPress Playground is all about. So Adam, welcome. First of all, can we get a little bit of a history of your good self? Just let us know a bit more about where you're from, how you got involved with WordPress, and how you got involved with Automattic.
Thank you for having me, Lee. It's a real pleasure to be with you here. So I started working with software about 15 years ago, still in high school. Turned out I found a gig and I realized, hey, you can make some money this way. So that was nice. And my first few projects were based on WordPress. And then I sort of diverged into other stuff like frameworks, Symfony, other programming languages. And a couple of years ago, I sort of rediscovered WordPress when I started working in Automattic. And for the last 2 years, I've been focused on WordPress for 100% of my time. I'm working as a WordPress core developer. And just last year, I thought, hey, WordPress is really hard to set up. It's difficult to start working with it. Like installation is, once you have technical details, it's easy, but getting there, you need PHP and MySQL and all that. So wouldn't it be fun if you could start using WordPress, learning WordPress with a single click, like on a website? And after some digging, I figured out, you actually can. And that's WordPress Playground that I'm so thrilled to be talking to you today about.
Nice one. So before we jump into that as well, there'll be a few people that are insanely jealous that you're working with Automattic. How did you get that role?
Oh, well, I applied and turns out they replied.
It is as easy as that, guys.
Well, for the record, at the time I already had like 10 years of experience under my belt, and I've been working in multiple companies, and I was a startup founder, and I have a significant WordPress experience. So there's that. I've been reading at the time, and I've been super nervous about this entire application process. I've been reading that out of every 100 people that apply, like only 6 make it to the end of the entire recruitment process. I don't know what the figures are like today, but that was it at the time. But after the initial interview, I was pretty surprised about this entire trial process at Automattic. Turns out you do a couple of weeks of paid work, and this is what you've been doing anyway, like on your day-to-day job. And that's your recruitment process. So that was very interesting to be doing actual work with the actual team that I later ended up working with.
That's phenomenal. That's a really great way to test your skills, but also to test whether or not you're all going to work well together as well. I think that's a really good method. And I had heard someone else mention that that's how they do it. That sounds fascinating. Certainly something that we do a bit of a more long-winded way where we'll actually get people in as apprentices into the company. So they'll get paid, and they'll actually get paid for a year with us. And they'll also be doing some form of course, usually with a local college. So we'll train them. They'll be doing a course at the same time. And then at the end of the year, if we all gel and if they've managed to pass their course, etc., we'll offer them a full-time job.
So this is really awesome.
So it's quite different, but it's also similar in as much, especially at the end of the process, you can really work out whether or not you all get on. And thankfully, most of us all get on, which is awesome. So WordPress Playground, tell us a little bit more about what it's all about.
Sure. So WordPress Playground is an entire WordPress running in your browser with a click of a mouse. So you don't need to do any prior setup. You don't need to install PHP or a database or a web server. You only need a JavaScript and a web browser, like really only a web browser because every browser runs JavaScript. So there's zero setup, zero computing infrastructure. You just open a link and that's it. And that's possible thanks to something called WebAssembly. So very briefly, WebAssembly is this way of taking regular desktop software and building it to a bytecode that JavaScript can understand. So we can do it with simple programs, like maybe just hello world, but turns out you can do it with quite complex programs like the PHP interpreter in this case.
Oh, cool. And big question, of course, will it run on Internet Explorer 6?
Well, I'm sure not, but I really hope no one runs Internet Explorer 6 these days.
I still have a clause in my contract that say your website will not be supported by Internet Explorer 6.
It's so awesome you have that.
Just in case. That's incredible. So essentially the browser can replicate on the fly an entire server environment with PHP, MySQL, etc., and you can spark up a WordPress there and then without going through that entire process of I don't know, going on to say DigitalOcean and creating a droplet and then installing WordPress and then installing all of your plugins, and then if it screws up, you got to do that whole process again. I assume with WordPress Playground, you can pretty much hit the reset and off you go, start over.
Exactly this. Actually, there's one technical detail to that that I'll clarify. So you mentioned MySQL. WordPress Playground actually runs on SQLite.
Oh, okay.
There's no way to run MySQL in the browser. And there's an entire story to that with the plugin that translate all MySQL queries into SQLite to make it possible. But yeah, that's I could talk for an hour probably about just that.
No, that's just as cool. I mean, I was quite impressed by the idea of an entire MySQL database running in there, but SQLite, that solves the problem perfectly fine. What are the key benefits then for users and for creators in the WordPress space?
Zero setup is a huge one. You can, if you want to mess up around with the site, like try out plugins, themes, create some pages, well, you don't have to set up any hosting account. You don't have to install anything. You just go to playground.wordpress.net and it's all there. Like it's your private site. It runs in your browser. You can do anything you want there. Maybe you want to upload your own plugin without risking breaking any live site. Maybe you want to build an entire theme in a site editor and then export it. Maybe you just want to prepare something and send someone a link to share that. Like all of this is possible on playground.wordpress.net, and it all runs on your device. So you're not actually sharing any data with any service provider, right? It's also private. Yeah. And if you want to reset it, just visit the link again.
That's incredible. When I first checked it out, I thought this was some sort of hosted environment, like the other kind of sandbox environments that you can create, where you can create something, you get a special link, and it's done an entire installation of WordPress on somebody else's server. And I'm always a bit hesitant then to upload our stuff to test it, whereas it's all happening in the browser. What can folks test with the Playground beyond just plugins and themes, though? For example, PHP environments. Can you play around with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can change PHP version to any version supported by WordPress going all the way back to 5.6. You can change WordPress version. You have full control over the files and the data in there. So maybe you want to import some starter content, or maybe you want to run a WP, like WordPress REST API request to set up some plugin. You can do all that. Even better, you can do it all with a JSON file. They're called blueprints, and they allow you to prepare sort of pre-configured WordPress Playground instance if you want to, for example, share it with other people. There's a amazing example of it's called GlotPress Playground, and Alex Kirk prepared that. So if you wanted to participate in translating WordPress, what you had to do was install WordPress, install a translations plugin, maybe install another translations plugin, get translations, install the plugin that you want to translate if you wanted to do that. It was a very involved process, huge ask. Right now, what you have to do is just click on a link and it all happens for you.
In fact, we'll put a link to that in the show notes because you've already provided us with that. That was fascinating because I was having a look at that earlier. That's incredible. So you've mentioned the JSON kind of, it's almost like a recipe that will start something up ready for you to rock and roll. If I'm then working on that website in my browser, this is all localized to me. Yeah. If I close the browser, is it all gone, or is there a way of saving that progress and eventually even exporting that out to the real world if I want to?
Sure. So there is a download button, and what it does, so normally in WordPress, when you export things, you get a pretty limited set of information. So maybe you'll get your posts, and maybe you'll get some additional metadata for them, but you won't get user accounts, for example, or maybe you won't get media files. With WordPress Playground, you get everything. So you get all your WordPress files, you get any plugins you installed, you get the entire database because it's just another file, It is a SQLite database. And then you can take that at a later time, if you want to, you can re-upload it to the site and you will recreate it. You can host it anywhere you want. And if you want to scrape the entire site that you built, well, you just close the tab and it's gone. In the future, there will be a way to preserve that over multiple browsing sessions, but that's it, what it is for today.
So I can play with it right now. I'll spark one up. I can play around with that. If I want to save my progress, hit that download button. I can then reopen and do some other things and then go back to my work. But hopefully in the future, you might even have like a snapshots function or something like that that might be able to save some of those sessions in the browser. That'd be pretty epic. Are there some specific use cases that you think for, say, web agencies, web developers might want to use the Playground for?
So there are multiple angles to go about it. And one would be to show a demo of your product, like plugin or theme, right on your company homepage. So every user would be able to visit and instantly see a WordPress where your thing is running. So technically, maybe you can do that today with a regular hosted WordPress. However, there are many concerns with that. Like, what if you give users admin access and some user is just malicious and puts offensive content in there? Like, you don't want that to happen. So there are like people invented ways of resetting WordPress every couple of minutes, or putting in a read-only mode, or doing like a bunch of these tricks that are, well, not obvious, and you probably can find a way around that. But with WordPress Playground, there is no centralized data store, so everyone is safe. Like, you can upload anything you want and it will not affect other users. For developers specifically, you can use WordPress Playground to learn WordPress directly in your web browser. So I prepared a demo of that. There's this interactive tutorial on my blog that teaches you how to use the new HTML tag processor API released in WordPress 6.2. So the way it looks like is you visit a page, you read about a premise, like a paragraph of text, and there's a code snippet. And you can run that code snippet in your browser and you can change it. And every concept is introduced using another code snippet. So you don't need any prior setup. You don't need to follow any steps, and you don't need to worry, oh, this thing was written 3 years ago. I wonder how much has changed since then, right? Like maybe the setup is not the same anymore. No, you just read and you learn as you go. And the future plan for that is to, like, my ideal vision is to have entire WordPress documentation consisting of interactive code snippets. And even better, I would really love them to be, that's sort of like nerdy cool tangent on that. I would really love them to be testable, so that every time someone merges a change into WordPress, it's tested against all the documentation snippets, so that everything is always up to date, right? So anytime you want to go and learn something, you know you're running the latest version.
I was just thinking, so you mentioned about putting it up as a demonstration. So I run Event Engine, and what we have is we do a installed and set up for you event website, and we have our own customized plugins that work specifically in the events industry. If we were going to put a demonstration up using the WordPress Playground, how can we ensure that somebody who's going to go ahead and check that out can't steal that? We obviously want them to subscribe at some point. What you first described was you can run WordPress in your browser, and you've got the database, you've got all the files, you can download a copy of it, etc. Is there a way, therefore, to display a read-only, as it were, quote unquote read-only, or at least limit the level of access that somebody might be able to have when they're taking a look?
Let me ask you a question first. Like, what's the monetization model on these? Are you charging for code or for API access, or what would I pay for if I was your customer?
So you would be paying you'd be paying to use the product on our service. So you wouldn't actually be ever accessing the code. We'd never give them access to the plugins, etc. These are for people who don't know how to code. They want to be able to input their own information, but they also pay us for the design, etc. So we're not releasing this to them because it would be an absolute nightmare. It's something that we used to do. So we like to try and restrict what they do, but we also don't want competitors to just go ahead and grab everything that all our work that we've done so far.
All right, so that would probably not be the best use case for WordPress Playground then, because you have to ship. So the entire WordPress runs on end user device, so you have to ship all the code that runs there. So if you're concerned about other people copying the code, well, that could happen.
Yeah.
However, what you could do, I know I've read recently how Tailwind explores what was the word for that? Obfuscating class names to make it, like not impossible to steal, but maybe difficult enough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I was using us as a use case, but then there's also people who have premium WordPress plugins who maybe don't want people to just grab the source of the latest version of the premium plugin they've put a demo up for.
Yeah, so plenty of premium plugins I've seen charge for API access. So that's one monetization use case. And then you would release the plugin inside WordPress Playground as a demo, but maybe that doesn't necessarily mean you would release API source code, right?
Yeah.
Because that would still be on the backend. However, if your business model is charging for source code and you're embedding it in something people can like click a button and download it, well, yeah, like that could be a bit more of a problem. What you could do, however, is make the download feature difficult enough to access, right? So right now on playground.wordpress.net, there's an explicit button for that because I wanted to make it easy for people. However, in your demo, like if you don't have that button, well, it would take quite a bit of effort and deep technical knowledge and maybe some hacking to do that. So that would probably be a deterrent enough for most use cases.
So it sounds like the three biggest use cases here really are for people to test work that they're working on within a team, for example, for plugin developers and theme developers who want to showcase what they have to be able to put that up online for people to test. And then finally, a great kind of low to no code or no tech experience way to learn how to use WordPress without having any of the other issues like hosting, getting it set up, configuring WordPress, or even knowing what the PHP version is that you need to run is, what are all these error messages and calling up your host and all of that good stuff.
Precisely. And as for the no code chunk end of it, there's this idea to integrate this with ChatGPT down the road.
The algorithm will love us now. We've just said ChatGPT. Let's just say AI. I'll put that in the description and we'll be blowing up on YouTube now. Carry on, my friend.
AI. But then you would have an environment where you have entire WordPress stack running, so you control backend and frontend, and you have something that can write code for both of these parts, and then you can test it. And here's the cool thing. So there was this hackathon in February where we built an entire coding environment for WordPress running in the browser, even on a mobile phone while you're offline. So then you combine all these things and you get zero setup development experience that's aided by AI. Like, how cool is that?
I can't imagine doing it on my phone, especially if I was... Well, I could imagine doing it on my phone if I wasn't doing any code. But if I could tell ChatGPT to do it all for me, that would be even better.
Yeah. Or like,
I mean, we actually use ChatGPT quite a lot. So just for code in itself, because there's so many things that you tend to forget. And now with the cool thing now is ChatGPT 4. I think it's a recent change. You can actually put in URLs. So I'll, for example, link to the WordPress codex of a specific page and then ask it to work up some examples based on the information on that page to see whether or not we can work out ways we can use it. Yeah, so it's incredible. It's an incredible resource. And we were having this conversation just yesterday in the team, and some of the developers were saying, well, are we will this replace us? And I was saying, no, I believe this will just become an amazing tool for developers to help us be more productive, help us to perhaps work things out that would have taken us maybe 2 or 3 days to work out. ChatGPT and other AI models can help us code more efficiently and also explain to us what the thinking process was. Equally, we have noticed that ChatGPT can be a terrible programmer. It makes some bad decisions, so you really have to be careful with what you're doing there.
You still have to know programming. But
exactly.
It is really cool in that it saves you like so much time. So like lately with WordPress Playground specifically, I asked it to, hey, here's a code example of before and after, like write me a pull request description. And it did. And it was pretty good description.
Oh, I like that. Actually, how on that, you mentioned, I'm pretty sure you mentioned pull requests. How can the Playground make it easier to test pull requests, etc.?
Every pull request, for example, let's talk about Gutenberg.
Mm-hmm.
Every pull request in Gutenberg goes through CI that runs all the unit tests. So in order to run them, it has to build Gutenberg as a plugin. So the output of that is a zip bundle, right? It's the same zip file you would put in a plugin directory.
Yeah.
So Playground, you can set it up to download that and install it as any other plugin. And then you have pull request previewer. I actually built one for Gutenberg repo specifically,
Nice.
and it can be integrated with pretty much any repo that has a plugin or a theme and the CI pipeline to build it.
That's fantastic. Folks, if you want to find out more, there are a whole load of links in the show notes that Adam has provided us, including that link to the translation demonstration that you mentioned earlier, Adam. So if you're listening on the podcast, I would now recommend that you look at the show notes, because Adam is going to share his screen and going to give us a demonstration. So that will be on the YouTube channel. Let's do that bit, mate.
All right. So playground.wordpress.net is this address where WordPress Playground lives. And when you go there, you see a WordPress website, and it's running entirely in your web browser. There's no PHP server behind that. So I can go and create a new post here, and I can publish it. And it's all in here in my browser. I can go and change the WordPress version to say 6.1. And this one has the same theme, so we don't see any difference in the face value. But I'll go back to 6.0. Boom, there's the other theme. I can change the PHP version. Maybe I'm concerned whether my plugin runs on 8.2. Well, let's go there and find out. Yeah, so maybe I want to edit this page, and then maybe I want to save my progress. So actually, I'm going to create a new one. Let's create a post. Just call it test. I'll publish it. There it is. And then I can just go ahead and save it. And boom, there's a zip file with my entire site in it. So some other cool things you can do with that. We won't be able to access them via user interface here, but there are some other cool demos. So for example, here on developer.wordpress.org/playground, there is this demo where you can actually pick any theme you want from this selection and choose a couple of plugins. And I'm going to click start, and now it installs the themes, plugins, and boom, here's my website. And if I go to WP admin, there's the Gutenberg plugin installed over there. So technically, what it does, and here we're getting into the non-UI way of customizing WordPress Playground, is, oh, I didn't want that. There's an iframe over here, right, pointing to playground.wordpress.net/remote, and it has some query parameters over here. As you can see, there's PHP 8.0 and WP equals 6.2. Actually, I meant this one. So it also mentions plugin equal Gutenberg, and plugin equal classic editor, and theme equal Raft, which means that's exactly what Playground is going to install. In fact, if I take these query parameters and I copy them over to this original tab where we started, it will do the exact same thing.
Brilliant.
And yeah, and now notice how the little browser UI we had here is now gone. That's because of this mode equal seamless thing. So that's useful also.
That's really helpful.
Yeah, there's a bunch of other things you can set up. However, query parameter API is limited. So as of a couple of days ago, there's this new API called Blueprints, which allows you to set up WordPress Playground using a JSON file. So in this JSON file, you can decide which versions of software do you want to use, but also that you want to log in or create a directory, write some files, even set site options, pretty much anything you can do with WordPress. You should be able to do it this way. And if there is no convenient helper or step, you can just run any PHP code or run any HTTP request. So some other cool uses of this WordPress Playground and the WebAssembly PHP are for teaching. So here's a blog post I wrote a while ago
Mhm.
that teaches you the new tag processor API in WordPress 6.2. And the way it does it is there are code examples all over the place that I can run, and this is the cool part, I can modify them.
Nice.
So maybe if I say hello here and click run again, it runs.
Yeah.
And this is not some trick or a gimmick, or there's no server behind this that powers it. Nah, it all runs in your browser. So
Brilliant.
this is actual PHP snippet running the actual tag processor library from actual WordPress,
Yep.
giving you the output here. And if you want to do something more fancy,
This
it
is
can
so
even
cool.
support libraries.
Yeah.
Like in here, there's a comparison against DOM document, which is it's not a standard PHP class, right? You need to have an extension. And you can also use PHP extensions in WordPress Playground, which is really cool. So another cool use case of WordPress Playground is showcasing the existing plugins and even exposing them for people to use right then and there. So this example is called WordPress Playground, and it was built by Alex Kirk. So if you wanted to translate WordPress, it used to be a case that you had to install WordPress, install translations plugin, maybe install a plugin that you want to translate if you wanted to do that. Maybe you had to download some translation files that already exist.
Yeah.
And that's a big ask, right? Like you cannot tell everyone, well, you'll be able to start translating in 10 minutes, right? Like maybe you have to say, well, it will take you like hours and hours of work, and maybe you won't even succeed. But with this thing, well, you can just open a link and there it is, all set up for you. So I can just translate something here, and this is already translated, but I'm going to say it's not a word, but
Yeah.
I'll do it anyway. You can just translate it. It's here, and then I can export it. I think, yeah, there's an export button here. And then once I do it, I'll be able to go to the actual translate.wordpress.org interface and put that translation in there and propose it for inclusion in the translation directory. So
As simple as that.
yeah.
Perfect.
And
I was actually going to ask, how do you download that once you've edited all that, but you went straight for it. Export button, you've got your profile, and then submit.
yeah, and I even messed something up. So Alex showed me how to click something right in the interface where the string exists, like in context, and then it shows up here. And once it's here, you have a button that unfortunately I'm not able to demo right now that says like just submit to translate.wordpress.org. So then you
That's
don't
amazing.
even need to export and re-upload it.
So, mate, that is a nerd or a geek's paradise. Incredible tool for web agencies. And I did tell you, actually, just before we started recording this, that I hadn't actually heard of WordPress Playground. I sent it round to my team, and everybody went mental with excitement. And they're all right now, as you and I are recording this, they are all actually playing with it. And I can see them messaging each other saying, OMG, look at this, I've just tested, etc. So I can't wait to show them this recording as well. Can't believe I'd never heard of it. I've obviously been living under a rock. So if you folks like me had never heard of this, please let us know in the show notes, or if you're on YouTube, please let us know in the comments as well. Adam, mate, how can people learn more about the playground?
Sure. So the single official resource you can go to is developer.wordpress.org/playground, and all these links will be in the description below. So there's also a recent post I published on web.dev, web.dev/WordPress Playground, where a recent take on what you can do with WordPress Playground, how the internals work, and what the future may look like are described. I also published an interactive introduction to WordPress Playground API on my blog, where you can go over some code snippets, click run, and see the magic happen. And finally, there's WordPress Playground GitHub repository and official documentation, which I highly encourage you to visit, take a look, share any ideas at all you may have in issues and discussions. I would love to get in touch with as many of you as possible. And these interactions inform the future of WordPress Playground, is what I'm saying. Like the translations playground I just demoed, that was only possible because Alex actually reached out, and we added some cool new APIs to Playground that made it all possible. So this is very live project, and it benefits from every interested contributor out
That's
there.
amazing. Well, on that then, how can people connect with you? And then we shall say goodbye.
Absolutely. So there's a Playground repository is a really good way of doing that, because I'm paying attention to that all the time, like issues and discussions over there for sure. I'm also on Twitter at Adam Zielin, and feel free to reach out to me on my personal email address, which is adam@adamziel.com. And also there's a meta-playground Slack on wordpress.org Slack. Should I say there's a meta playground Slack channel on wordpress.org Slack? Yeah. And if you like this and you find this exciting, and you know anyone else who might also get excited about it, please, please, please share this and help me reach as many people as possible. Like, this is a super cool new thing that was never possible before. You can run entire WordPress in your browser, and I would just really love to spread the news to as many people as possible about this.
Well, I love how excited you are about it. It's very infectious. You sent me a lot of information before we recorded this, and I too got extremely excited. Folks, if you are excited, please go and have a play with the Playground. Share it with your team. Share it with your friends. I think this is game-changing and can absolutely speed up our overall productivity as a community. I think this is absolutely incredible. So be sure to check it out. This is going to be a show notes full of links. So head on over to Trailblazer FM, come to the show notes, and you'll see all of those resources in there. And we'll also try and fit as much as we can into the YouTube description as well, although that's slightly more limited. So folks, thank you so much for listening. And if you're on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. Cheerio.
Thank you for having me. Cheers.